This lesson is the nature of science. So normally we use the word nature to describe something that is not man-made, like a forest or an ocean. In this situation, we're using the word nature to describe the way it is. So the way that science is. Or an easier way to think of it is how to think like a scientist. So you're going to have your notes. Right now, the title's in the middle. It says The Nature of Science. Go ahead and draw a little thought bubble around it and fill in the words, how to think like a scientist. That'll help you remember. I'm going to go through some examples of scientists, of famous scientists and their work. And you're going to draw a small little icon or picture or drawing or something to help you remember that idea. So our first example is a scientist named or called Alhazen. That is his anglicized name. He was Arabic, so he has an Arabic name that I will likely mispronounce. So I'm using the anglicized name, Alhazen. So the first way to think about, to think like a scientist is to know that the natural world is understandable. Alhazen wanted to know about the light that the sun gives off and how does it come through windows and reflect off mirrors, that kind of thing. And he was able to establish, well, light actually travels in a straight line. And the work that he did helps us understand the way that mirrors work, that glasses, lenses work, and it's the foundation for our understanding of the way that our eyes work, microscopes, telescopes, cameras, all that. He wanted to know what was going on, and simply by asking questions, he was able to figure that out. You might draw a little picture of a magnifying glass, whatever is going to help you understand or remember the main idea there. The next way to think like a scientist is that science demands evidence. So when you have a question or when you're trying to understand or explain something, you got to back it up with evidence. Our example is Marie Curie. So she devoted a lot of her life to understanding radioactivity. She wanted to know more about radium, which is a mineral found in rocks. It glows, it's a little bit green, and people would use it to make things glow in the dark, which is pretty cool, until you end up using it too much and you end up dying. So Marie Curie, again, she gathered evidence through lots of experiments to understand radioactivity. Her work laid the basis for X-rays and MRIs. We would not be able to understand nuclear power without her work. So one example of an icon or a little picture you could draw would be a little data table. I personally like drawing a little list of check marks, but you do you. The next way to think like a scientist is to know that science requires logic, but also imagination. Anytime there's a problem that we have to solve or a question we have to try to answer, we need our imagination to help us kind of figure it out. So our example here is George Washington Carver, who you probably learned about in elementary school as the peanut guy, but he's way more than that. He actually pioneered the field of environmental science. In the South, cotton was a cash crop that was grown everywhere, but cotton as a cash crop is terrible for the soil because cotton takes all of the nutrients out. George Washington Carver was able to find a solution and figured out that you can grow peanuts. Actually improves it. It brings nitrogen out of the atmosphere and fixes the soil and sticks that nitrogen back into the soil so that in the future you can use it to grow more crops. So it was George Washington Carver's imagination where he invented peanut butter and a whole bunch of other ways to use peanuts to encourage people to then grow peanuts, plant peanuts, and fix the soil. The next element of the nature of science, as in how to think like a scientist, is to know that your scientific ideas should be durable. And that's what Charles Darwin was able to do. And he was able to come up with the theory of evolution. And his ideas have continued to last for 150 years with only more evidence and more data and more scientific knowledge backing up those original ideas. So one icon you can use, one little picture you can draw is of, I think this is supposed to be a cell that continues being a cell, like it doesn't not be a cell. That idea, it just continues on.